your view in your industry, like in fintech futures. How is that like?
Yeah, sure. So I've been a reporter for about a year and 9 months now at Fintech Futures, and I kind of fell into fintech. It wasn't something I trained in at university, but I find it really interesting. It's such an evolving space, and something that's really nice as a woman is that there are quite a lot of other female reporters in fintech, which I love. So we've got in the UK at least, like there's different ones like Isabel Woodford, Emily Nicole. We've got there's loads, but it's just nice to see so many different women kind of writing on the topic, as well as being in sort of working in the space. So yeah, it's an exciting space to be in, and whilst it's important to obviously highlight women today, it's also important to kind of highlight women's achievements all year round. And it's slowly getting there with in terms of sort of senior leadership positions and capital going into female founded companies. It's fortunately still not at a place it should be. That's something that I'm trying to help change by using my platform as a reporter, to try and get women to talk more about their founding stories, about their journeys to raise capital, and things like that. So yeah, it's a long road, but hopefully talking about regulation specifically in Cyprus, but also with regards to the female experts we have. I mean, it doesn't matter really that they're women, it's the fact that they're experts in their own right. So I'm excited for people to hear from them.
That's awesome. I mean, and it's also quite interesting that it does coincide with the UN's year about women in leadership. And that's a very, very, very nice coincidence. So I'll leave the floor to you.
Thanks, Antonia. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right, cool. Yeah, so sounds like we've got everyone on board now, so that's brilliant. So yeah, welcome 4 of our panelists. I'm going to introduce you one by one, and each of them is going to give a little sort of minutes introduction to who they are and what they do. So let's start off with Xenia. If you want to turn your mic on and your camera on, and introduce yourself to the audience.
You can hear me, right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ruby, for the opportunity. And first of all, I would like to extend a big thank you to the organizers, X-Valid Technologies, for organizing this event, and all the sponsors for making it happen. An event in celebration of all women in fintech on the anniversary of the International Women's Day. For all of you we have never met, my name is Xenia Neofidou, and I'm the founder of CX Financia, a consulting firm in Cyprus specializing in corporate and compliance services. Having a background in finance and accounting, I have been involved throughout my career in various managerial positions, predominantly the financial services sector. The idea of starting something of my own never crossed my mind when I set off on my career path more than 2 decades ago. Over time, however, I realized that the entrepreneurial side of me was constantly driving me for something of my own. And so after some deliberation, I founded my own company, CX Financing, in 2015. 6 years and no regrets, I should say. We are proud to be offering an exclusive mix of services to our clientele in Cyprus and abroad. For us, our interest in fintech and blockchain technology was a natural progression. It is something our clientele is interested in, and we have managed to successfully merge technology with regulation, creating a complete offering to our customers. I'm an active member of the fintech community, participating in technical committees for funds of CIFA and IPAC, and a board member of the Cyprus India Business Association, regularly speaking at events about finance and investments. I'm very excited to be here with you today and looking forward to your interaction that will follow to discuss fintech and regulation. Back to you, Ruby. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks, Xenia. And yeah, like I said, we've got some very well-versed panelists in this topic today, and as you've shown with your intro. Yeah, so let's also move on to Evdokia. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself for the audience?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, first of all, to Cyprus FinTech Summit and X-Valid Technologies for the initiative, and for organizing this fantastic event. We are very proud to be here presenting the Women's Day. Thank you, Ruby, the co-panelists, and all attendees for actually finding the time and the attention to be here today. So I'm the director and of risk and compliance at Cyprus Funds. We're a consultancy firm. We're specializing in setting up investment firms, funds, payment institutions in Cyprus and abroad. And our purpose basically is to answer questions. We are here to help in compliance, in operations, in the technology side, and we consider ourselves problem solvers and, first of all, optimists. Whenever finance overlaps with the technology, we want to be there, and we make this happen to find solutions for our clients. Thank you, and I'm looking forward for more discussions about this theme that we are presenting today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Evdokia. And next we've got Victoria. You want to give a quick introduction to yourself?
My name is Victoria Schulte. I'm the founder of the payment consulting firm PSP Angels. I actually started up as an accountant many moons ago in Cyprus, and we realized that there's a big need and a big demand on the market for some kind of payment intelligence, which is a very unique kind of topic, which is right now a very, very mixed up information, what you can find. So what we do, we help online businesses to optimize their payment flows and cost by finding the best payment and banking solutions for them. Obviously, I'm consulting as well. I'm also a partner of Oxygeo, a boutique firm in Malta, which was created specifically for the iGaming industry, for payment consulting. And I also run my finance and tax consulting firm in Cyprus for over 15, 16 years now. So I stayed as an accountant as well. What we try to help is actually make sense of the payment industry out there. We keep our eyes on the market. We alert all our clients about the new developments, so they don't have to spend time on that. It's just think about it as an extended arm of the payment department. So I'm very, very glad that I can be here today and I can be a part of this panel. I'm very excited about all the lovely subjects that we can discuss. And I feel very honored to be on the same panel as the other professional women partners of mine.
Thanks, Victoria. Yeah, I am as well. I'm very excited to be able to kind of almost interview all four of you. I think it's going to be a really interesting discussion. And last but not least is Mini. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself before we launch into the discussions?
Hello, everyone. I am Ismini Papacosta. I am a barrister at law and founder of YAB Law Legal Services and Tech. My journey into the world of technology has started some years ago, a bit like this, following a career of 20 years into the legal profession and the corporate commercial world, having worked for law firms in Cyprus and abroad, as well as local and internationally based companies. My enthusiasm and passion towards science, tech, and maths inspired me to dare into fintech. My path to fintech provided me experience and expertise in emerging technologies such as distributed ledger technologies, blockchain, artificial intelligence, computing, data analytics, machine learning, Internet of Things. As a member of the Cyprus Blockchain Association, I have gained practical experience in emerging technologies, having cooperated closely with Christiana Aristidou and Yannis Menelau, with whom I shared my passion, bringing into life legal tech projects. On this International Women's Day, I would like to share with you that, similar to many women, I owe a lot to my mother, a talented educator and leader whose love to science has turned this passion into reality. I'm grateful for being here today amongst you. I thank the organizers and the sponsors, but above all, I thank you, the women of tomorrow's FinTech, because women have been and will always be the driving force. Back to you, Ruby.
Thanks, Ismini. And yeah, I mean, you couldn't have put it better. And I think that, yeah, all of us have shaped our careers off, influences from women as well as men. And I think it's really important to highlight that. So thank you for putting it so eloquently. So now we've kind of introduced everyone. I also realise I haven't introduced myself properly. I'm Ruby Hinchliffe. I'm a reporter at Fintech Futures, which is a publication based out of the UK, but it also covers a lot of European fintech news, and then also US and, well, globally as well, but those are the two main regions. So that's where I come from with my background. But yes, let's launch into the questions. So Ismini, I'm actually going to come to you first. For this first question, and it's based off the legislative landscape in relation to emerging technologies in Cyprus. Do you want to kind of give us a bit of an overview of that to sort of set the scene for our discussion?
Well, it goes without saying that the spread of the global pandemic the last year, as we all lived it, has turned digitalization into a priority to every business. Why? Well, the trend over the past year, digital adoption of repayment solution, e-banking services, more use of big commerce platforms, more use of digital channels and e-wallets, growth of fintech investments and partnerships, the evolution of blockchain, the list goes on. Stablecoins, increasing interest in central bank digital currencies, the need for cross-border payment. All the above have increased the attention of governments and regulators as to how fintech is evolving and what needs to be done to support these changes. But let me tell you something, I will make you sleep well at night. If I tell you that overall we have very good European regulations which have contributed to the creation of a trustworthy environment to transact in the electronic financial spectrum. And further, there are several regulations to apply to fintech, both in Cyprus as well as in Europe, which we apply into any innovative technologies that we are using, and to whichever technologies we apply to our business models. These regulations do not interfere with the technologies, but merely with its use and how the results of the technologies are used. Getting now into the so-called game changers. The EIDAS regulation of 2014, the regulation on electronic identification, authentication, and trust services for electronic transactions in the internal market. At this point, I want everyone to be clear on the distinction between a regulation and a directive of the European Union. Whilst directives have to be implemented in national legislation in accordance with the procedures of each member state, a regulation binds everybody throughout the EU, and it is therefore directly applicable to each member state without any national implementation. Number two, the AML5 on anti-money laundering, enacted into law very recently, it addresses a number of emerging and ongoing issues. The impact is far-reaching. Why? Number one, cryptocurrencies. We now know that cryptocurrencies are digital representation of value that can be digitally transferred, stored, or traded, and is accepted as a medium of exchange. It actually goes further in imposing reporting obligations by giving financial intelligence units the authority to obtain the addresses and identities of owners of virtual currency. So no more anonymity. Providers of cryptocurrency exchanges and wallets must now be registered in their domestic locations. What does that bring us to? Well, benefits, more cryptocurrency products, but crucially, to compete with who else? The Asians. I wonder why. Which have already made legislative process in integrating cryptocurrency with financial markets. Number 2, prepaid cards. Number 3, high value goods. Number 4, beneficial ownership. Number 5, politically exposed persons. This is a hot issue. It requires actually EU member states to compile and publicly release functional PEP lists made up of prominent politically exposed public functions. Number 3 is the Directive PSD2 on payment services, a revolution to the traditional banking system as we know it today. It introduced open banking with licensed TPPs using APIs to exploit the platforms of data to build innovative applications. We see now banking as a service, BaaS as a platform, BAB. Going quickly back to EIDA's regulation now, it is revolutionary because it's building trust, it creates legal certainty, it eliminates cybercrime. Did you know that before EIDAS, a citizen of one member state could not use his electronic identification to authenticate himself in another member state? But this is not the case anymore. EIDAS has laid down the conditions and the legal framework under which electronic signature, identification, documents, signatures, stamps, seals, delivery services, e-government services are legally binding. Remember when in the old times, our yayades, godmothers, grandmothers used to put their thumbs on the ink to sign documents? And until recently, we had to sign in handwritten forms. Well, not anymore. EIDAS governs also the manner by which the trust services providers will operate and the solutions they will provide. Well, my time is limited. I was forced to be brief. However, please do dare to investigate. Do dare to embrace technology and keep yourself updated with the new trends. Do dare to come to us, and why not to join us. Back to you, Ruby.
Thanks so much, Yasmini. I really appreciate that. Really helpful to kind of lay the scene and the sort of the groundwork that's already been made. And also just a quick aside to the audience, if you do want to ask any questions, I've seen a couple come through already, but if you do want to ask any of our panelists any questions off of what they've said throughout the session, then just pop them in because we'll have a Q&A at the end once we've kind of run through some of our structured questions. Yeah, so next person I want to come to, kind of jumping off of that, is can you provide us with some updates about the regulatory frameworks for fintech businesses operating in Cyprus and sort of the type of fintech activities that are regulated? Obviously, Yasmini's kind of gone into a high level, but it'd be great if you could kind of, yeah, put your own spin on it and perhaps what interests you specifically.
Certainly, and this is a very interesting question and we would love to do that. Thank you, Ruby. And it was a very interesting introduction from Yasmini as well. So before I go directly to the question, I consider it important to briefly describe the fintech landscape in Cyprus. Cyprus is an internationally recognized financial center with a sound banking sector and legal framework fully harmonized to EU and regulations, which has helped into a smooth transition to fintech. And as already mentioned by Yasmini, fintech encompasses the use of any technology, especially new and emerging technologies, such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, blockchains, and other distributed ledger technologies in the financial services broader industry. One of the most prominent fintech-influenced markets is Forex, and as widely known, Cyprus hosts a vibrant and fully comprehensive FX industry. Other companies in the field of fintech are electronic money and payment institutions, prime brokerages, major platform providers, liquidity management companies, RegTech companies, and reporting companies. Cyprus is also a top emerging fund center in Europe, with visibility greatly enhanced by being able to list Cyprus funds on international platforms such as Bloomberg, Clearstream, Morningstar, and Refinitiv. Other thriving fintech companies include crypto trading platforms and crypto exchanges, which have accelerated their activity in Cyprus, including companies offering alternative payment solutions. Now, the spectrum of financial services in Cyprus is regulated through two competent authorities. The Central Bank of Cyprus, CBC, is the regulatory authority for payment institutions, including commercial banks in Cyprus. And the Cyprus Securities and Exchange Commission, CySEC, regulates investment services companies, funds, and fund management companies. Regarding the current regulatory framework, I want to clarify national competent authorities do not typically distinguish between fintech and traditional business models in their authorization and licensing activities, since they authorize a financial product or activity and not the technology per se. In this respect, fintech business models in Cyprus can be established, licensed, and operate under the existing EU regulatory framework, being the regulatory framework followed by Cyprus as a member state. Unfortunately, at the moment, Cyprus has yet to develop a comprehensive fintech legislation. Rather, fintech activity is at large regulated by reference to existing financial services, laws, and regulations. I'm not suggesting, however, that Cyprus has fallen behind other member states. In fact, most of the other member states are at the same level of development, probably taking a safer approach and waiting for the EU to guide them. To this end, in addition to the existing body of legislation, we see specific rules being issued with a prime focus to address specific issues and innovative products and upgrade the regulative regime to adapt to new technologies and ensure investor protection and service quality. CySEC, for example, issued the crowdfunding directive and further rules, which are complementary provisions to MiFID and relate solely to investment-based crowdfunding. Another step forward regarding regulation was the circular issued by CySEC, which gives guidance on how Cyprus investment firms, CIFs, should calculate capital adequacy for cryptocurrency investment and how to report it. This addresses the much-needed direction so that CIFs can invest in cryptocurrency and be assured of compliance, but also the comfort that risks involving cryptocurrencies are managed properly. Another development is the Eu-50ml Directive, which has been transposed to national law legislation and significantly expanded its range to application to fintech businesses. So we now see service providers of crypto assets or custodian wallet providers and other financial services for crypto assets fall within the scope of AML regulation. So I must say this is a positive development, and the gate is now open for service providers on crypto assets offering extended line of services such as financial services on crypto assets can now be regulated and get registered with CySEC and be able to offer their services in an approved way. Of course, there are regulatory regimes that do not specifically fall under the financial regulations but are relevant for fintech businesses. And this can include the transparency requirements law, the processing of personal data or GDPR, cybersecurity, as well as other regulations, all of which may apply to fintech businesses. Finally, Fintech is expected to further develop in Cyprus once the National Strategy for Distributed Ledger Technologies, DLT or blockchain, will be implemented. In concluding, and as you have probably realized, no successful fintech business can exist for long without an in-depth awareness of the prevalent regulatory framework. Thank you, and back to you, Ruby.
Thanks, Enia, and I think you're very right there. I think to get anywhere with your fintech, you need to understand the regulation and how it changes between jurisdictions. Yeah, so let's move on, Victoria. I wanted to ask you, because you come from the payment solutions industry, how are your customers responding to fintech regulation changes in Cyprus?
Well, the ladies before me explained everything what we need to know about the regulation, and they were really throughout. What I can say is from the point of the view of the users, right? So as an entrepreneur and as an online merchant, what my clients and obviously us see benefit of these changes. So what I can say that every time that there is a change, obviously there are a couple of people who are happy about it and a couple of people who are not. Obviously, when there are changes, that means that you have to pay more money to your lawyers just to comply with all the new regulations, to be always up to date with the regulator. So that part is always going to be a pain, right? But what we need to concentrate on is that Cyprus is in the European Union. So obviously when something is happening in the European Union, it will affect Cyprus as well. And us as the company who is providing financial services, let it be cryptocurrency solutions or exchange or Forex or holding client funds or EMIs or find any kind of other financial institutions where we are actually dealing with the third-party funds, we are dealing with someone else's money, then how we can benefit of these changes and put everything to in order, which helps our clients the most. So what I see from these changes is that it was long due. It was very much needed. Obviously, crypto is out there for the last couple of years. So what I saw from my end, from my clients, everybody was asking me that, okay, when's going to be the new change? When's going to be a regulation? I want to do things right, but I don't have the opportunity to do things right. So what can I do? So finally, these regulations came. Now we know what to do to make things right. And the most important thing is not only for the providers to have these legal framework within that they operate, but also this determines their relationship with other third-party providers. And I'm talking about the payment providers, because if you're a cryptocurrency company, you have to collect fiat from your clients at one point, right? Who are your main partners? Is Visa and MasterCard, who are allowing you to collect money from your end customers. So if Visa and MasterCard requires you to have a regulated company, and there is no regulation in Cyprus, how can you actually sign a contract with them, right? The compliance is not going to accept you. So many times I've seen that companies were forced to shift over and move over to a country when there's a regulation, and I'm talking about Estonia. I think it's not a secret that Estonia was the first one who regulated the crypto exchanges. So I think for these companies, it's a bit of a fresh air that finally I'm not forced to go somewhere else. I can do things right within my own country, where I have my team, where I have my management and control, and make sure that I'm working within a regulated environment. And from this perspective, it's absolutely amazing. And from the end user's point of view, it also gives a bit of more security, because if I am an end user and I don't know, I don't trust, everybody's online nowadays, right? How do I know that who's gonna disappear with my money and who is doing things right? So when I see that, yes, Cyprus actually has a really good regulatory framework and that company complies with all that requirement, I have more trust and as the end user to deposit my money to use their services, let it be any kind of gambling service or any kind of forex service, investment, or even cryptocurrency trading. So bottom line is that yes, changes are always painful, but this is definitely for the better. And I really hope that from this time onwards, more and more countries will follow that. The good thing about it is that Cyprus is still very new about this because we are a small country. We can adapt to the changes and we can be a bit more agile ahead of other countries, which is definitely a benefit because other countries are still way behind of this regulation. So at least Cyprus is leading with example of actually creating these legislative framework, which is definitely a good thing. So yes, I'm very excited about this.
That's great. Thanks, Victoria. And a quick question, just off the back of something that the audience asked, which you may be able to answer, but no worries, we can leave it to the end if not. But it flows quite nicely onto what you were saying. And the question was, sort of what kind of best AML and merchant onboarding courses and certificates would you advise? And I was just wondering if there were any sort of types of licenses or certificates or anything that you would advise customers having to kind of remain compliant.
As a rule of thumb, you should comply with the regulation where your clients are, right? So if you want to trade in Europe, you have European customers, you have to comply with the European regulation. If you're trying to go to, let's say, Asia, right, then you need to have the local license, you have to do your reports locally because you're serving the local clients. So your best bet is always pay attention to what are the regulatory requirements in the given country, what you're targeting, where are your clients based, and it's a very, very thin line to actually make the best of both worlds, not to overdo it, but do enough, which is covering you, that you do the right thing, you have the right compliance strategy, you have the right AML procedure set up, but on the other time, you're not overdoing it and you're blocking yourself of business, because many times we have seen that there is a little corner of the passport missing and poof, back to square one, your KYC is not accepted, or you know, it's readable, but it's tiny bit blurry. So every company has their own right, at least for now, to determine that what level is enough, which is not too much, it doesn't cost too much, but does the work. And that's the very thin line that it's hard to determine. What you need to do, rely on your own legal guy. That's why you have a legal person in-house, but always consult with the risk person as well, because that's what makes or breaks the business.
Thanks, Victoria. I appreciate you answering that as we go. And yeah, Evdokia, I want to kind of come in now. Let's look. That's all right. No worries. Evdokia, do you want to add?
Yeah, just wanted to add here regarding the AML courses for Cyprus specifically. There are specific courses for AML compliance officers, which are offered by CySEC, and if someone wants to be an AML compliant officer in an investment firm, they have to do these exams. So it's good that if someone is interested to get a license in Cyprus and be AML officer, to do those exams. Just to clarify on the AML certifications, I think that was the question.
Oh, thank you, Xenia, for jumping in there. That's really helpful. So appreciate that. Yeah, so otherwise we'll move on because I want to get to Evdokia because we haven't heard from you yet. So I want to look specifically at the single electronic reporting format. Do you think CySEC and the Central Bank of Cyprus will move towards this, and what sorts of challenges does it pose?
Thank you, Ruby, and that's another interesting topic in terms of the technology side, and I will say yes. It appears that CySEC and the Central Bank of Cyprus, which is the first one, will be moved to the single electronic reporting format. And the introduction of this is, I would say that is happening with the resolution reporting to the Central Bank of Cyprus. This reporting is due at the end of April this year, where credit institutions, investment firms with the capital requirement 750K, meaning that the market makers, they fall under this regime and this reporting obligation. The challenge that the firms are facing is that the reporting, the simple reporting format has to be submitted in the XBRL format, and it has to follow the EBA taxonomy 2.10 actually. So as I'm really interested in the data, and as Salvos, we have investment prepared the XBRL reporting solution for our clients that fall under these regulatory requirements. So using our extensive experience and then designing, implementing in terms of the compliance point of view, and in terms of the regulatory technology to build up the schemas for the XBRL reporting, we prepared the full package for the seed package forms. And we're actually in the final stages of the testing with the CPZ, which is very interesting, you know, when we are entering into new regulatory, and we are actually supporting the regulation, the regulatory authorities through the testing period to test the formalities, and if there are trial and errors in order to report efficiently towards the end of the reporting period. I personally authored and published today a relevant article related to this topic, which is very important because I really urge everyone to look at the early and get everything, all the data that they require in order to comply with the new regulation and submit the forms to Central Bank. And finally, I will say that this will be the beginning of this single reporting format, where I will personally expect the new CRR2, where applies to the investment firms in June 21, to be introduced again with the single reporting format, which already is happening in Europe. Therefore, investment firms and credit institutions has to be prepared early to meet all the regulatory requirements instead of saying, it's additional reporting. It is not. We know that it's coming. So technology is here, and we all are looking forward to make this happening. I hope I answered the question successfully.
Yeah, you did, Evdokia, and thank you for kind of going into a bit of detail there. I think you did explain it very well. So thank you for that. And I guess that kind of sets us at a nice point to kind of move into blockchain, which I know is something that we sort of want to discuss. And I'll come to Ismini again for this one, and I'll come back to you, Evdokia, in a little bit on this topic. But Ismini, I know you said in the past that blockchain is kind of arguably the new religion of fintech. Can you give us a bit of background as to the role of blockchain in financial services today?
Yes, thank you. Well, 2008, Satoshi Nakamoto published a white paper on Bitcoin, turning the world upside down. Peer-to-peer, digital cash system, blockchain, the new invisible technology. Do you remember those big blocks similar to Legos, but a little bit bigger? My son used to love them when he was little. Well, imagine that on those blocks, you can now put data and information, and you connect them. Good old times. Decentralized, distributed ledger, on which data and information is stored and proved on blocks by cryptographic methods in chronological order. It is immutable, it is tamper-proof, it is transparent, eliminates intermediaries. Widely used in financial services of today. Transactions between two parties, smart contracts, trade. Product traceability, proof of quality, origin of products across the supply chain. In finance, customs and certification, transportation and logistics, insurance distribution, intellectual property, government procurement, cryptos. No personal data is revealed, and thus recording precisely who owns which crypto through a global network. Into marketing. Did you know that global digital advertising spend alone this year is estimated to reach $389 billion? Blockchain disrupted the digital marketing as well. How about the data privacy one? Would wonder. Well, we covered that as well. In fact, pulling data away from customers is the most exciting feature of blockchain. Its decentralized database enables transactions between the parties without verification. Did you know that Unilever and Nestle are using blockchain in their technology? Did you know that Walmart has teamed up with IBM on a project to make their supply chain process transparent? They use blockchain for the consumers to trace their products. This boosted consumers' confidence. Isn't it amazing to be able to trace the production of the food that we consume? Did you know that since the advent of the internet, no technology has stirred up so much popular passion and curiosity as the blockchain? Did you also know that the World Trade Organization highlighted that the barriers lifted due to blockchain could result in more than $1 trillion USD in new trade in the next decade? So yes, it is the new religion in fintech. Now, as we all know, blockchain cannot exist without a network, and this network cannot decide unless it adapts a certain consensus mechanism. A consensus mechanism in a decentralized system is a fault-tolerant mechanism used to achieve the necessary agreement on a single data that is put on the block. In simple form, let's take the example of a country with a decentralized system. A central administrator holds the key information of a database, like for example, the driving licenses. He has the authority to maintain and update that database. His task is to make certain updates. Therefore, in a public ledger, as before mentioned, fair, efficient, functional, reliable, and secure mechanism is achieved. This important task is performed by the consensus mechanism. It's a set of rules that depends entirely on the contributions of the participants in the blockchain. Lots of types of consensus, proof of work, proof of stake, capacity, etc., etc. There's no time to delve into those. The mechanisms are used in a blockchain network to create different models of governance. And allow me to say that the distribution of rights allocated differently to participants creates innovative and revolutionary models. Some participants will be granted rights to change the data, and some others will just sit back and watch. What do you get out of this phrase? Very simple, that nowadays we can design models, various models of governance to enable us to feed blockchain in all locations and in every industry. This is what has paved the way to the development of DOS, decentralized organizations, and DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. I need also to do a very small briefing on blockchain and RegTech because it's really important. RegTech blockchain takes RegTech into the next level. With an increased need for compliance in the face of growing risk of fraud and mismanagement, industries have turned into the RegTech industry for solutions, with blockchain currently shaping it. Using technology to comply with regulatory requirements is nothing new, but using blockchain, it is an entirely new animal. Blockchain has the potential to create seismic changes in every industry. Over to you, Ruby.
Thanks, Ismini. I think you've done a good job there covering like the plethora of use cases for blockchain. It's not just something that corporates can use it. There's huge opportunities for corporates to consumers as well. So I think you did a really great job of covering that ground. So thank you. So now let's come back to Xenia and let's look specifically at Cyprus and how has Cyprus approached crypto related regulations, and how does this approach compare perhaps to the rest of Europe, if you want to give us an insight into that.
Thank you for the question, which I must admit it's got an extended scope. So in your question, you used the generic approach and you made a wider reference. You refer to crypto-related regulations. Since I'm required to respond to this question within a certain time limit, allow me to assume that you meant existing regulations, or allow me to say traditional regulations, which may have brought crypto-related products or assets or specific crypto-related behaviors or uses or activities under their ambit. Also about upcoming laws and regulations which purport to regulate such crypto-related products or assets and their use, including the approach of certain regulators or international initiatives to crypto-related assets or products and their use. I use crypto assets as the broader category which encompasses, among others, cryptocurrencies and tokens. A common feature here being the technology used, for example, mainly blockchains, but also other distributed ledger technologies which have cryptography as the main ingredient. The legal nature and legal status of crypto-related products or assets have indeed been a matter of discussion for some time now. The EU is currently reviewing existing EU financial legislation to see how these rules apply or may apply to crypto assets and initial coin offerings, ICOs, and I'm using ICOs as including all types or kinds of token offerings, in other words, STOs, ITOs, and so on. Towards this purpose, the EU, among others, called for more clarity at the EU level concerning how cryptocurrencies or crypto assets are defined. EU would like to see a harmonized approach. Therefore, it is no surprise that they took the view that action is necessary at the EU level to protect the investors, but also to allow a leveled playing field. But it's not only the EU. The same approach has been taken by the European Banking Authority, EBA, and ESMA, who also issued relevant reports on the suitability of the EU legislation in this area. ESMA supported the introduction of EU-wide rules for crypto assets and crypto activities. ESMA Crypto Asset Advice suggests that most crypto assets do not qualify as financial instruments. Therefore, will not be possible for them to fall under the existing ambit of existing EU regulations on financial instruments, or should be subject only to some minimal level of regulation, while at the same time identifying that specific kinds of tokens are indeed financial instruments and should be, strictly speaking, regulated by either declaring them as financial instruments and probably expand the relevant list of financial instruments covered by the regulations, amending the relevant laws accordingly, or by creating new regulations that would fit innovation in this field. EBA reached the same conclusion that most crypto asset related activities are not covered by the EU Financial Services Regulation, and that member states' divergent approach poses risks to investors and consumers. Speaking of cryptocurrencies in Cyprus, while no prohibition is directed for cryptocurrencies, CySEC and CBC have issued specific warnings and announcements regarding dealing with, trading in, or promoting cryptocurrencies, with further warnings issued about the risks associated with these virtual currencies, for example, high volatility, and that there is no legal obligation to reimburse owners for the face value of the currencies which are not backed by real assets. Now, concerning ICOs, CySEC clarified that they should be invested by entities with experience and knowledge regarding these fundraising vehicles. It further clarified that certain ICOs, depending on their function, may fall under the existing regulatory criteria. A recent ESMA decision explicitly provided that where crypto assets qualify as transferable securities or other types of MiFID instruments, then the full set of EU financial rules apply, including the Prospectus Directive, the Markets in Financial Instruments Directive, and other related directives. Regarding Cyprus investment firms, CIFs, offering derivatives on virtual currencies, these may now qualify as financial instruments and fall under the applicable investment law. Therefore, CIFs, when dealing with derivatives on virtual currencies, must obtain specific authorization by CySEC and abide by their general obligations under the existing investment law framework. Now, the introduction of the amending AML law implementing the Eu-50ml Directive brought custodian wallet providers and virtual currency exchange platform under its ambit. This, in essence, means that Cyprus' legal framework is introducing crypto assets by defining them and bringing within its scope entities that provide services or are responsible for the distribution, the offer, and or the sale of crypto assets. These service providers now are required to be registered in CySEC registry of crypto asset service providers and comply at all times with their obligations. Now, before I close, to mention that in September 2020, the EU Commission published a proposal for the regulation of crypto assets, Markets in Crypto Assets Regulation, or the MiCAR, and includes all types of crypto assets that are not yet covered by EU financial law, especially MiFID. It is currently under consultation, but once adopted and enforced, will be directly applicable in all EU member states. The MiCAR regulation is a great piece of legislation and has ambition to set global standards for the oversight and regulation of digital blockchain-based assets by implementing clear-cut rules and long-term legal certainty. The Cyprus National Strategy currently being examined favors also regulating products, activities, and uses of blockchain and distributed ledger technologies, including crypto assets. So to conclude, without doubt, the introduction of regulatory provisions in Cyprus will bring much clarity in this area, as it will seek to impose requirements for the transparency of trading and the proper management of large exposures and default risk, all concerning virtual currencies. So I hope it was useful, and back to you, Ruby.
Thanks very much, Xenia. Yeah, and you kind of touched on on my next question for Evdokia, which is around the registration of crypto asset service providers in CySEC's registry. Do you want to add anything, Evdokia, to what you think about the way that they are registered, and any sort of debates or conversations you've had that you want to touch on?
Yes, thank you, Xenia, for giving a highlight on the Eu-50ml, and as Mini touched a bit, this new regulatory framework. It is a very recent framework which is transposed actually for Cyprus. We were waiting for over a year for this to happen and to actually see what is going to, how Cyprus will transpose this regulation and how this will be incorporated into the current practices of the investment firms and the activities that we are doing. So I'm actually following through the crypto assets, the discussion Nicolas Xenofondos, the partner that Cyprus was having on the previous summit, where cryptocurrencies are seeing an ever-increasing institutional and retail interest all over the globe. So it is about time we treat this asset class seriously and professionally within the proper regulatory framework. So CySEC, it's following, I would say that the FCA announcement of the crypto business registry, where FCA was already registering crypto asset providers under its registry, and it regulated in a way these different assets. And now CySEC is introducing probably a similar way of doing this, where we already know that the crypto asset service providers will get authorized under the registry to offer the current services, the 8 investment services that we are having under the investment services, the MiFID investment services, which includes the RTO, the execution of orders, and dealing on account portfolio management investment services. Therefore, we're waiting now to see whether the existing SIFs, for example, will be able to, under their existing license, to act the crypto exchange, crypto provider services, or a separate license has to be issued under a different brand name, under a different category. So it is expected from CySEC to be issued in the relevant directives in the coming weeks, because the AML directive transposition came into force like 2 weeks ago. So I will expect that CySEC is already having the directives ready, and they are waiting to see how this is going to be structured. I'm sure that they have this, so they will know whether we are adding to existing licenses or to new. To be honest with you, I will be expecting new registrations. So we are separating each company's services and investment firms separately from the crypto exchange services. So I just want to add here that the registry has to be mandatory in CySEC, regardless if you are already a crypto asset provider in another EU member state, which is different from the current situation where we are actually using the EU passport. Where, for example, having a license in another EU member state, automatically I'm using the EU passport to the member states. Here in Cyprus, we will need to be registered at CySEC on the registry, and now it is about to see whether we are adding to the services or it has to be separately. Also, we're expecting to see the regulatory requirements in terms of the compliance side, because it has to come with a compliant package, the required obligations, maybe annual or quarterly requirements. I will expect also add on to the capital requirement, the capital adequacy ratios that they already exist in the investment firms. It will definitely add on to the crypto services, because it is a complex product, different product with many high AML risks. I hope I answered your question and added to the Xenia's question, and maybe I answer also the question from George Angel that he raised previously. If not, I'm happy to elaborate further.
Thanks, Avdokia. Yeah, you hit a lot of nails on the head there with that answer, so thank you. And yeah, I think you did add quite a lot to what Xenia has already said, so thank you for adding some new thoughts there. I'm going to quickly come to Victoria and try and understand from a crypto client side what kind of regulations they want to see in Cyprus. And then once we sort of finish there, I'm going to get you all to give a quick sort of future-looking statement, and then we'll start to wrap things up and make sure we've covered all our Q&A. So yeah, if I come to you, Victoria, what do your crypto clients want from regulation in Cyprus?
the things I've just learned over this half an hour is absolutely incredible. And imagine yourself being the merchant, right? Being the crypto exchange. What would you do? How would you feel? So many things to do, so many things to comply to. It's absolutely, you know, mind-blowing the amount of requirement that you need to comply to all of a sudden. So yes, it's obvious that all the crypto-related businesses head is just you know, zooming around of what's happening and what is the deadline, and if I make a mistake, what can happen, you know, what is the penalty and all that. So definitely it's not an easy time to comply, but what the clients really want is something which makes their life easier, right? So if I'm a startup crypto exchange, tell me in 2 sentences, how can I start? What do I need to do? How much does it cost? And if we can actually provide them with the relevant replies, which is straightforward and it puts down the cost, and we know exactly what's the timeline, that's how we can attract new businesses, Cyprus, with this regulation. And I think this is the most important thing to understand, because obviously the regulator sees everything from the regulatory point of view. We need to do everything right, which is the right thing to do, right? But when it comes to startup companies, maybe you don't have the possibility to actually comply with everything up to the last dot. And what is the cost to actually set up all the relevant technology, all the AML and KYC providers, what is required. And what we saw a couple of years ago in Malta, that Malta wanted to be obviously the blockchain island, right? And they came up with this whole regulatory framework back in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. And at the beginning of 2020, there were still no licenses given out. So people started to be a bit, you know, frustrated that, all right, we paid the money, we started the process, but where is my license? And in the meantime, all the banks and all the payment service providers could not move forward because they said that I need a license. So we need to find, again, this is a very fine balance between doing things right and doing things effective. So it's not an easy time, because obviously there is a lot of things what the regulator needs to understand and the regulator needs to learn, and bottom line, we're all humans. So how can we explain, you know, these crypto related knowledge to someone who is at the tax office for the last 60 years, right? So obviously there are some human limitations there as well. But on the other side, it's a very quick industry. Everything is changing all the time. The regulator really needs to catch up with these kind of changes. And the only way that Cyprus can attract new businesses, if we do things as simple as possible, as cheap as possible, but as quality as possible. So I think it's very important to keep that in mind.
Definitely. Thanks, Victoria. And like you said, it's a balancing act in some ways, isn't it? So thank you for those insights. So I just spotted one question that I wanted to quickly get Xenia to answer. It's regarding the 5th AML Directive. The question was just asking, had it already been transposed to Cyprus legislation, and whether you know anything about legislation called DAC 6. I don't know if you want to offer any insights on that. Oh, Xenia, I think you're on mute.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Regarding the 5th AML, it has been recently transposed. I think it was in February 2021. So now it's effective. That's why it started issuing some circulars, and we are expecting more guidance how it will exercise the different powers regarding, especially the special registry that also Evdokia mentioned. Yes, so it's implemented. It was a bit late, but it's implemented. Now, regarding DAC 6, I know it should have been implemented from last year, but I think so far in Cyprus it hasn't, but it will be soon. They are actually examining it now, and it will be soon. And mainly it will affect intermediaries that are doing, it falls under different criteria. So these people that are affected, they need to find what information to report and report accordingly. But as far as I know, it's still not implemented in Cyprus, but it's gonna be soon. So I don't know if any other of the ladies have any other updates regarding that 6.
Thanks, Eni. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think you answered it well. I'm actually going to get you all to give sort of future-looking statements now. And Ismini, I'm going to come to you first. So if you do want to add anything onto that Q&A question, then please do. But Ismini, I'm coming to you and asking you what you would expect in the coming years for fintech regulation in Cyprus. And just as a reminder, guys, we've got about 10 minutes left, so try and keep your answers to a minute or two, just so we can make sure we get to everyone.
Okay, I'll do my best. Although the pandemic has shown already its dark side up to now, I dare to say that the future in fintech looks bright. Fintech in Cyprus, to a great extent, is connected with the EU1. To be precise, we are looking forward to a blockchain legal framework. We're looking forward to seeing how such a framework will approach tokens, tokenization, and how CySEC will approach this issue, as this is the first piece of legislation. Whilst we're looking closely into the disruption that blockchain introduced in all industries, as we saw before, we cannot wait for a digital transformation in the public sector, which will enhance the application of technology in the governmental administration. This presupposes the implementation by our government of certain EU directives on the digital transformation. This is too risky, and as a lawyer, I see this, and I want to emphasize that this is a necessity to all those people from the public sector who are watching us today. We hope that such a legislative framework will facilitate the application of distributed ledger technologies in Cyprus in a technological neutral manner, which is consistent with existing EU legislation. A balance should exist between the need to promote and enhance new technologies and the need to avoid money laundering. We need to ensure good governance rules and procedures. We need to ensure enhancement of the innovation hub of the CySEC. We need to explore the possibility of an innovation hub within the Central Bank of Cyprus. DRO, the future is too fast and too furious. What once seen as a science fiction has now become a reality. So stay tuned. Back to you, Ruby.
Thanks, Ismini, and I appreciate that, and thank you for keeping it relatively short as well. I'm going to come to Xenia next, similarly asking you to kind of look future, and I'm going to ask you, are financial regulators and policymakers in Cyprus receptive to fintech and innovation, and are there any regulatory sandboxes options for fintechs in Cyprus?
Okay, thank you, Ruby, and I would like also to keep short. So it's an interesting question which I would like to exploit. It actually gives me the opportunity to elaborate on the current approach and progress that Cyprus has made in relation to innovative businesses. And starting with the policymakers, there is no doubt that incentives introduced by the Cyprus government to entice foreign investment have been successful over the last years. In terms of operating in fintech industry, Cyprus has an opportunity, and we see serious efforts to adapting a more progressive outlook. The current regulatory regime governing the Cyprus financial sector is doing much by way of innovating reforms and incentives to achieve the island's ambition of becoming a leading international financial center. Automating public service, upgrading networks, and promoting entrepreneurship are the key goals of Cyprus to strengthen its global competitiveness in the industrial revolution. Investment in fintech has been boosted by a low corporate tax rate at 12.5% and the developed network of double tax treaties. Cyprus also offers an 80% tax exemption on qualifying assets, the IPBOG regime, taking advantage of the effective tax rate, which is as low as 2.5%. The significant number of multinational companies and international banking units already operating in Cyprus is a proof of this, as well as more than 8,000 IT professionals which share the fintech industry. It is also noteworthy that Cyprus' legal framework is particularly strong, due in part to mandatory compliance with EU regulations. Cyprus has put in place all necessary mechanisms for the prevention and suppression of money laundering and terrorist financed activities. So, also in the last year, I'm happy to say that competent public authorities and regulators in Cyprus have shown active interest towards fintech development. I have seen Cyprus participating in a plethora of blockchain initiatives in the private or public sphere, all of which are expected to positively impact the delivery of fintech services. As a matter of national strategy, Cyprus has also placed special emphasis on innovation and research, both of which are closely related to fintech. Financial services are recognized as pivotal for the island's economy and are bound to receive specialized support from the government. Cyprus recognizes that innovation and research are instrumental for a horizontal development of the Cyprus economy. For this purpose, the Cyprus government has set up a Deputy Ministry of Research and Innovation and Digital Policy under the direction of the Ministry of Finance. We had Mr. Kokinos in the last FinTech Summit, where he explained the objectives of the Deputy Ministry, which include to promote, guide, and develop the digital transformation of Cyprus while facilitating the operation of startup businesses and support the Institute for Research and Innovation. This effort is supported by a generous support package with state and EU funds to spend on a number of projects over the next 3 years. Also, the Cyprus Securities and Exchange Commission has also been actively involved in the development of fintech and has established its own innovation hub, established as a knowledge share point between CySEC and interested fintech and RegTech entities. This allows...
Sorry to cut you short. It's only just so we can get through to everyone. So thank you. You covered a lot there already. So thank you. But I just want to quickly jump to Evdokia. I'm just aware we've got a couple of minutes left, but if you want to share any insights onto sort of recommendations for even better regulatory framework models, both in Cyprus and in Europe.
Definitely, to be honest with you, I anticipate that Cyprus will follow European innovative regulatory technology, the frameworks, and investment firms and CPC, I would say more than CySEC, has to prepare ahead of these changes. So we establish Cyprus as, we follow actually and continue following Cyprus being a financial hub in Europe, especially after the Brexit. And I would say that we, in our term, like any other consultancy firms, are following all these trends, and with the crypto exchanges, with the crypto services, with the crowdfunding, new regulations that are coming, and we anticipate everything should be revised again. Even MiFID II will become MiFID III, will cover more firms, more investment services. Ioannis Ando, you actually shared the question about the investment compensation scheme under the, what's going to happen with this under the crypto exchanges, which I will say that all of this will be revised, even that the investment compensation regulation was revised 2 years ago. Now with the crypto and the crowdfunding, I'm sure that all of this will change again, because we are increasing the risk, not as a Cyprus, but overall the products are changing. So when the products are changing, the regulatory framework is changing and the technology evolving as well. So I will say, just to close in from my side, that we are capable as Cyprus to have very good companies and very good personnel to follow the whole technology environment, and it is here to stay. So I would say that we are going to evolve as well.
Thanks,
so, thank you from my
Appreciate
side.
it.
Yeah.
Thanks. And really quickly to Victoria, sorry, we've only got a minute left. But if there's anything you've kind of, as a final takeaway you've taken from this panel, or messages you want to give to companies, both in Cyprus and Europe, what would you say?
Right, you do need someone who will help you out. That's no two ways about it. Before that, you could have a great idea and then you try to make it work on your own. I feel like that's not the case anymore. Everything, as Izmini said, it's future is just too fast and too furious, and I do agree with that. You will need help when it comes to regulation, which is obviously gonna limit a lot of entrance for good ideas, but that's why we have the hubs and the government support for all the startups. But for more established businesses, we will see a lot of companies falling out, and only the good and reliable providers stay, which on the long term it will benefit us, the end users, because we will have less and less risk when it comes to financial products. So on the long term, it's going to benefit us. On the short term, I expect a lot of tears, but that's what we are here for, right? So to advise everyone accordingly.
Exactly.
And anyone has any questions, I'm sure that I'm talking for everyone. We are here to help. And we are very happy to share the knowledge. So in case that someone has any questions, just feel free to reach out to us personally or through this forum, and we try to make things happen.
Yeah, definitely. I echo that. All four of these women have got amazing profiles. They've got loads of experience, and they're very friendly and happy to answer and connect with you guys. So yeah, feel free to reach out to them. I'm going to wrap things up now because we're about 1 minute over. But thank you, all four of you, Izmini, Xenia, Dokia and Victoria. You've all been amazing. The amount of just insight that you've all given has been incredible. So I'm very, very appreciative of that. Thank you as well, Cyprus FinTech Summit, for having all of us. We're very, very grateful to have been able to give the platform to so many great people. And I'll pass over now to Antonia.
Hello. So thank you so much. Wow, what an insightful discussion. It was pretty amazing. Thank you so much, Ruby. And thank you to all of our panelists. And so we had quite a lot of questions. We will be totally grateful if our esteemed panelists could have a look in the chat and respond to as many as they can. Thank you so much.